Welcome back to Recap IT. Today we are going to recap a 2014 action thriller movie titled Kite. When her parents are brutally murdered by unknown assailants, Sawa, a young girl, teams up with her father's ex-partner and scours the nefarious human trafficking world to find the murderers. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to this channel. Now without wasting any further time, let's begin, shall we? Our film opens with a woman named Sawa being carried by an unknown man while unconscious. He then takes her into an elevator at an adjacent building. Despite the fact that an elderly woman is accompanying them, he seems unconcerned as he continues to make out with the unconscious Sawa. The woman, disgusted, proceeds to scold him. However, he starts threatening her in order to keep her silent. Sawa, on the other hand, regains consciousness and fights back against him. After shooting him in the head, she manages to flee the elevator. Sawa removes her disguise outside. Sawa turns revealed to be on the hunt for Amir, the Flesh Cartel's boss, who murdered her parents. Her father wanted to get rid of him because he was a cop. As a result, she's tracking down all of his soldiers until she can track down Amir himself. Meanwhile, a lieutenant called Carl arrives on the scene of the crime to discover that the guy was murdered by a woman. Despite his doubts that she was capable of murdering him, he continues to pursue her. Sawa is cleaning herself up afterward as Carl enters into her flat. Carl was her father's partner, which explains why he's assisting her. He gives her an amp to calm her down because she's going through withdrawals. He then informs her that she has left behind a witness, which might put her in much more danger. She informs him that she only tracked down the man because he kidnaps girls to sell to Amir. That, hopefully, will lead them to Amir. Sawa meets with Vic, Amir's right-hand man, the next day in order to enter their operation as a prostitute, when she finds them questioning Jeppy, the man in charge of the girl's cargo. He then looks through her for weapons, but all he finds is a vibrator. Finally, he decides to put her through a series of tests with a man named Clive, and if he approves, they'll hire her. Clive tries to undress her, but she pulls him away so she can undress herself. She does, however, maintain a knife hidden in her panties, which she uses to murder him. She walks outside to grab her vibrator after a time when she is stopped by a man. She apparently kills him with it. She eventually locates Jeppy, but he flees before she can question him. A man named Aburi intervenes while she is fleeing. Surprisingly, he brings up the fact that they were once friends. She doesn't recall much of her history, though, because to the amps she's on. Finally, he tells her that if she wants to remember, she should meet him at the cinema. Carl lashes out at Sawa in her apartment, accusing her of murdering Clive instead of boarding the ship as they had agreed. She tells him, though, that she still has a plan. She tries to get to Jeppy's residence after that. Unfortunately, a gang called Numbers breaks into the apartment and murders Jeppy and his wife. Despite Sawa's best efforts to assist his daughter in escaping, they are apprehended. Fortunately, Aburi saves Sawa by throwing a stun grenade upon her and escorting her away. Meanwhile, a man named Rainhook informs Carl of what happened to Jeppy. Jeppy turned out to be an undercover cop providing information on the operation to the cops. Rainhook has deduced that Sawa is behind all of the murders, and has ordered Carl to track her down. Sawa awakens to find herself in Aburi's residence a few hours later. Despite his attempts to convince her that he knew her parents, Sawa flees to her apartment, where she is suffering from withdrawals. Aburi, on the other hand, manages to catch her. She then accepts his offer to assist her in finding the girl. Fortunately, they discover the warehouse where all of the females are kept. However, Sawa is apprehended by a gang member. The woman then tells her that she must speak with Staggy if she wishes to purchase them. She, on the other hand, is just interested in finding him and killing him. She successfully flees with Aburi and the girls when Sawa knocks her down. After a few hours, Carl is able to extract an image of Aburi dragging an unconscious Sawa from the security footage. He rushes to Sawa's apartment, terrified, only to discover that she has gone missing. Meanwhile, Sawa joins a strip club in order to meet Staggy. She steals a wallet from a man and gives it to a girl in the restroom so she may buy her clothes with it. As she searches for Staggy, she hides in the men's bathroom when she hears him enter. She apparently disguises herself as a male in the washroom and then murders all of Staggy's men, leaving only him alive. However, before she can question him, more of his guys rush into the bathroom. As a result, Staggy manages to flee while attempting to kill them. Fortunately, she catches him just as he's about to drive away and learns about the package. Despite his attempts to kill her, she manages to stop him in the end. The next day, Aburi hands the girls off at a police station, only to be confronted by the same gang members who followed him around the day before. Fortunately, he manages to get away from them. Meanwhile, Carl is destroying evidence so that he may protect Sawa from the other cops pursuing her, as well as a photograph of her and her parents that she hides. Sawa wakes up in the middle of the night, barely in time to board Amir's ship. She then proceeds to the unloading location for the shipment. Unfortunately, the personnel there catch her because the shipment is exclusively made up of lads, and it's easy to assume she broke in. After a while, Sawa wakes up to find herself bound, and she is greeted by Amir. Amir, it turns out, told everyone that his shipments are made up of women so that he could see who would pursue him. He then brings in Vic, who recognizes her as the girl who murdered Clive right away. Amir, it appears, decides to torture Sawa for information because he wants to know who is responsible for the murders of his clients. Fortunately, she manages to free herself and murders everyone in the room except Amir, whom she saves for last. He flees after a brief struggle. Despite this, Sawa continues her assassination rampage until she reaches him. She finally chops off his head, but it doesn't make her feel any better. Sawa goes to her flat a few hours later to discover that the photograph of her and her parents has vanished. She also discovers that her mother's earrings are missing, which causes her to cry. Meanwhile, Carl is being investigated by his boss for improperly disposing of evidence. However, when they attempt to apprehend him, he flees before anyone notices. Sawa returns to her flat the next day to discover Carl sitting next to her. She informs him, terrified, that it wasn't Amir who killed her parents, but someone else. Despite Carl's best efforts to tell her that Amir is to blame and that her outbursts are due to her withdrawals, she continues to refuse. Despite this, he informs her that the cops suspect him of destroying evidence. As a result, they must leave town before they are both jailed. Unfortunately, he informs her that if she wants to discover the culprit guilty, Aburi will provide her with the information she requires. Sawa appears to be perplexed as to what Aburi has to do with her parents' deaths, so she decides to seek answers from him. Sawa demands to know who killed her parents at Aburi's residence, and he decides to tell her the truth. He then brings her to a basement and refuses to accompany her into the room. Sawa is surprised to learn that Aburi has been holding the man, Otis, hostage, with a gun on the table waiting for her. Otis' wife was assassinated because he knew who was selling the unit's weapons for the most money. When it was discovered that her father was also aware of the situation, he was assassinated with her mother. Carl was the one selling the guns the whole time, and he's the one who's been controlling her the whole time. Sawa is surprised to learn that Otis is Aburi's father. Unfortunately, they are apprehended by Carl just as they are about to leave. Otis crawls out of the cellar to shoot Carl, despite the fact that he has drugged Sawa. Carl is bleeding out despite killing Otis. Sawa tries to attack him while he is explaining why he did what he did. He does, however, hold her at gunpoint until he is able to go. When Aburi goes to check on Otis, he discovers him dead. After a while, Carl is on the run from Sawa and Aburi. He begins to die slowly as he tries to get into his automobile. Sawa then makes his way over to him. He tells her, proudly, that he created her. They can both lead the flesh cartels now that Amir is dead. Sawa, on the other hand, shoots him with amp nonetheless, so he can pay for what he's done by being jailed. The police are called to the crime scene the next morning, where they discover Carl, who has been injected with multiple amp syringes and has most likely forgotten his identity. Meanwhile, Sawa and Aburi visit the trafficked girls' shelter, where they discover them all having fun. The girl Sawa rescued then approaches her and embraces her, bringing back memories of her youth that she had thought she had forgotten long ago. And this is where the movie comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, until next time.